welcome to the Big C Sports. Coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And the good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful May the 20th, 2020. Round up the Deportes. Big C, how's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, I want to say an extended thank you to all our frontline healthcare workers, our doctors, our nurses, our first responders, and it's cold down here. I have to start another fire in the fireplace.
You know it's springtime, Big C. It's all fair love and war. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Also, Big C Sports is powered by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear, welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you got to have a smart TV or you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. Big C, the pause is almost off. You know, if you ever pause something on your TV with the DVR, you take the pause off. That's what the whole sports world is doing. I want to make sure we pay homage to our Veterans Crisis Hotline. They are experienced in helping veterans and their loved ones get help. Big C, why is that so important to you?
Well, Charlton, you don't take the pause off this pandemic that's going on with the veterans. It's costing some 20 lives a day due to suicide. And many of our young Americans also, Charlton, have fallen victims to this horrific disease. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline number that we give out daily throughout our show, Charlton, is one of those ways we can hope stop that pandemic.
Yeah.
And, you know, when we think about our veterans in this country, Charlton, that they have given so much, and people have a tendency to forget about them, you know, when doesn't seem to be a major war going on around the world, someplace on the globe, but there's a war going on in their mind every day, Charlton, that they can't get away from. And the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number is a relief for them, Charlton, if we can get them access to it. Many of our veterans are homeless or destitute. They don't have access to phone service or internet service, Charlton. So that needs to become a cry from Americans, a way to get veterans access to the National Suicide Hotline number. And we're trying to do our part every day.
We are definitely doing our part every day, Big C. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net. And always try to help people when you know they need help. Also, very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T, Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants. Just tell them Big C sent you. The goal is simple: recruit 100 real estate brokers, put their property listings on TV, just like McDonald's does it. Car dealerships do it. Sports teams are going to start doing it too, Big C, as soon as they get off the pause. Watch TV work for your real estate. 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. Also, for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. That's bigcsports.pacwm.com. And you can get opportunities there too. You know, Quicken Loans, they do a lot of advertisement on TV and radio, and I know they're on to a good thing and looking forward to becoming the next Quicken Loans. But at the same time, Big C, when you think about being quick, if you're playing in the Big Ten football conference and you want to compete with Ohio State, you better be really quick because they get some of the best athletes in the country. And they're also quick with the athletic director, Big C, Gene Smith, the athletic director at Ohio State. He stated today that he expects to have football players back on campus starting June 8th, and also that they expect to play in front of limited crowds at the Horseshoe between 20 and 25,000 fans. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, everybody, Charlton, is relaxing the restrictions on this coronavirus. And if they're taking their cue from the administration. If you think about the administration now, Charlton, that said the Russia investigation was a hoax.
Yeah.
Why are they turning all their attention now back to the Russia investigation, trying to deflect thoughts from what's going on with this coronavirus pandemic?
Yeah.
But as all the schools are now going to relax their restrictions on athletes getting back together and getting students back on campus, I mean, it's just the Big Ten took a chance to admit this in front of everybody before everybody else did it, Charlton. I guess they're going to be the leader of the pack. But all the schools are going to follow suit in this. Right now, the country is not thinking about this pandemic that's going on, even though the numbers are starting to go back up.
Yeah.
It's all about economics.
Yeah, speaking of economics, and you think about numbers going up, Gene Smith, Big C, he's 61 years old. He oversees the nation's most comprehensive and successful collegiate athletic programs at Ohio State, but he's 61 years old. He also meets the profile of what the CDC has said is one of the harder hit groups, and that's African American. So I know he's gonna do what he has to do to keep the money coming in. But if you just look in the mirror, he looks like the same profile that's saying to be careful. He may be on high blood pressure medication. I don't know. I'm just saying. But does that come into it at all, or is it just about the money, Big C? Your thoughts?
No, I mean, you got to understand that Gene Smith, Charlton, he has the best of medical assistants around him all the time.
Yeah.
You think about the hospital there in Columbus, right there at the University, Charlton,
yep.
as well as the doctors that are on staff with the athletic department. These are individuals that, have access to a doctor anytime they want. They don't have to wait in line. They just make a phone call. You get the speed dial on a cell phone. So when you look at Gene Smith, and not only that, you got to figure that he's going to be an individual that takes care of himself physically, Charlton, being in charge of the most successful, athletic department in the United States financially. He's on top of things, but he also understands this is a business, and that's what everybody has to look at collegiate athletics. It is a business. It's not about athletics, because if it was just about athletics, they would call them students first.
Yeah.
But they're athletes. They come to school for one thing, that is to generate revenue for the athletic department. And when you look at the value of an Ohio State football player, it's about $650,000 per athlete, Charlton.
So that they say that the money will oftentimes rule out. Ecclesiastes 10:19 says money answers all things. 3 NFL players, however, thus far, they've tested positive for COVID-19. Washington Redskins receiver Antonio Golden, and then the Los Angeles Rams also, they had a center by the name of Brian Allen, and then Denver Broncos great linebacker and Von Miller. And I know there may be a couple of other people that don't have to come forward and say, hey, I had a positive test for whatever substance, but I know that they're going to play the game and people are going to assume the risk. And that's just the way we have to get used to things coming up for the 2020 season. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, life in America is going to assume the risk, Charlton. When they relaxed all the restrictions in the state for separation and stay-at-home policies, Charlton, that just opened up the door. And you have to understand, when you take a risk, there's going to be liability that comes with that risk. And the liability is how many people now are going to contact this COVID-19, Charlton. As you saw numbers going down in some places, but numbers are rising. And that's the biggest problem. And not only that the numbers are rising, it's like the president said, why test? Don't test people. This is not what we need to do, is test, because the more people that we test, the more people that you're going to come up having positive tests comes out of that. So they're willing not to have the test, and let's just deal with the mortality rate, Charlton.
Yeah.
That's what the United States would rather have. They would rather have the numbers from the mortality rate than the positive test rate.
Ironically, everything is a risk, but I still feel in my own heart, every parent that has a child going into college, they got to make that choice too, because kids really don't have rights until they turn 18, and some kids go into college when they're 17. But we'll figure it out as we go along with medical science. But I do want to ask you this question, and not to single out Gene Smith at Ohio State, but they are number one when it comes to how to make money up there in Ohio. Big C. College football, is it when or will college football come out and state that a coach or a player has tested positive for COVID-19? It's part of a HIPAA violation medical doctors cannot go forward and give out your information to the public. They could be sued and lose their license. So will they hide this also, or will they make it something that the public will know about, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, the difference is they don't have to state a name. That's the only part of a HIPAA violation. If you come out and you give that person's personal medical history. But if you indicate that you have players that test positive, you have to understand also in the collegiate ranks, Charlton, when players sign that scholarship, they give away certain rights. They give away the right to protect themselves from, public scrutiny, Charlton. The university basically owns whatever they need to say about that athlete, because when they see an athlete goes in for knee surgery or whatever else, Charlton, that's not a HIPAA violation, because that athlete technically belongs to them, and the rights to give out their personal history belongs to the university also. That's part of that contract that they sign with the university. They give that up. So, I mean, the NCAA knows of players and coaches that have tested positive. This is just something they have not released. But I believe this was one of the reasons why they put a halt on all athletic, participation going back to the basketball season when they canceled the March Madness, because I believe players and coaches potentially had tested positive during that time. And to stop the spread of this, Charlton, they didn't want to put the liability factor on the colleges at that point. They just said, okay, we'll cancel it all, because the chances of other players and coaches contacting it during March Madness, the percentage is too high to take that risk. So I believe they're already aware, players and coaches that have contacted the COVID-19, they just suspended all operations because of that.
When it comes to contracting anything, I recall when I was in college and we had free health care. I mean, it's part of the being able to go and being on a program, athletic program that offers free health care checkups, etc. They often offered contraceptives. When I remember talking to some of the football coaches in very candid conversations, coaches always talked to players about how not to get STDs, how not to get someone pregnant. They talked about things that were adult conversations, so you're not some knucklehead thinking that it comes from eating watermelon seeds. But I remember they were also saying about STDs on campus, and they gave out contraceptives so that people would at least have a choice, if they chose that choice, to exercise that right to protect themselves. You don't have a choice when it comes to COVID-19. It's a pathogen. It's not like the way you use contraceptives. Does that make any sense? Your thoughts?
Well, no, I mean, everybody's aware that it's a pathogen. No one has a choice, regardless of the age group, Charlton. No one has a choice, and nobody really wants to be affected by this, Charlton, but it has affected all of America and the world.
Yeah.
Everybody has to be conscientious of it now, and when they talk about ways of preventing it, Charlton, there's no prevention measures other than practicing social separation.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to practice social separation, Charlton, once you open up these university campuses. And especially once you open up all these practice facilities. If people were not aware of it, why, as these NBA teams and baseball teams are starting to open up their practice facilities with limited participation, they're only allowing 4 people in at a time. The MSL Soccer is doing the same thing, 4 players at a time, along with 1 support person with them, Charlton. So when you look at the size of these cavernous facilities and they're saying, okay, only 4, a total of 8 people all at one time could be in there, then people are aware that social distancing works. And once you cross that barrier of social distancing, then your chances of contracting this disease, are maximized.
Yeah, and we know there's always the guinea pig thing. But I also want to just mention, too, there was a study that came out on CNN. They couldn't find enough mice because mice have gotten smart and they learned how to avoid people. There's a book called Who Moved My Cheese. People should Google that and read that. But there have been they were seeing some monkeys that had some positive results, that they were able to eliminate the virus. But that's in a monkey. And they use whatever guinea pigs they can. And I know they're going to see what they can do with athletes, too. I want to get your thoughts on this, though. The NCAA Division I Council, they voted Wednesday to allow voluntary on-campus athletic activities to resume in football and in men's and women's basketball starting June 1st. Multiple sources confirmed after the COVID-19 pandemic forced the shutdown of sports across the country, the council banned all on-campus activities, and the moratorium was set to expire May 31st. That's just about 11 days away, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it was easy to vote for letting it reopen, Charles, because if they had put in another moratorium on a ban, it would have lasted several more months. So it was easy to say, okay, since the previous one was expiring, technically we don't have to vote to extend it. So I don't know if they voted or not, Charlton. It's a play on words.
Yeah.
But after the moratorium had ended, when you think about it, it had been in place for 3 or 4 months. They just let it run out, just let it run its course. But, what they're doing is desperately trying to get these student-athletes back on campus.
Yeah.
And they're talking about mid-June with the football players being back on campus. That's well before any other student-athlete is going to be on campus. So when you look at the hotbed, the petri dish that these football players are going to be in, you can't practice separation. You got a locker room where the lockers are side by side. You got shower stalls, Charlton, where everybody's in a general shower together.
Yeah.
When you have a training room where people sitting on the same tables getting their ankles taped, their knees taped, they're all in the same close confinement of each other. And how do you take a water break during football practice in the heat that you're going to have in June and July?
Yeah.
I mean, there's only so many little Gatorade bottles that you can pass around. And not only that, you're going to have your support staff out there passing these bottles around. And they normally carry them in these 6-pack containers where the bottles are side by side. So think about how many extra people you have to bring in. But the more bodies you bring in, the more opportunity for contamination.
Yeah, and we know it's just a part. There's always, when they say you go to war, there's collateral damage. They expect certain people to be injured. However, I want to come back at you on something because I know you always talk about, you say, Charlton, what about the 100,000 stadiums that they have down in the SEC? Almost everybody has a stadium that seats at least 80,000 to upwards of 100,000. But would you believe this? As the coronavirus outbreak has affected the renovation project at Bryant-Denny Stadium, I believe that's down there in good old Tuscaloosa, Alabama, Big C. At least 10 people at the site have tested positive for COVID-19. As far as I know, they have not allowed the athletes to come back on campus yet. They can't even get people to renovate the stadium without coming in contact with COVID-19. The report also states, Big C, that there is fear that more positive cases will come about because the workers did not know that their peers were infected with COVID-19. That make any sense to you, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, then you think about this. This is one of those southern red states, Charlton, that is dying to open up, and they're not even reporting the number of coronavirus, positive cases that are coming out now. But this is just evidence to show that it exists in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Tuscaloosa, Alabama is a city of a population of about 100,000 people.
Yeah.
The football stadium seats 103,000 people.
Yeah.
So if you got workers at the stadium and you said some 10 have tested positive already,
that they've shown
and other co-workers were not aware that they had the virus, so that meant that they were exposed to them.
Yeah.
This is what we're talking about and have been talking about, that these football environments will be petri dishes for this virus, Charlton. So if you think about the workers that are working on this stadium, and I don't think that the workers get as close to each other as the football players do. Some do, but not all of them consistently.
They're not tackling each other.
You think about the heat and humidity that's down there in Alabama at this time of the year. Think about those players with those uniforms on and those helmets on and how they're perspiring, and that body fluid that's splashing back and forth between each other when they make contact and when they tackle somebody and block somebody. So this is going to be a very serious condition that we're looking at that's going to be down in the South. And if they have these guys working in that facility, how do you go in and sanitize that facility, Charlton, prior to the players getting there?
Well, I guess they're going to pray. They're going to close their eyes, turn a blind eye, and pray. I remember still going back to college where they wanted to let people know you're out of your home now, you're away from your parents, and not everybody has the same parenting. Some people don't even talk about how not to get pregnant. At the same time, some people don't talk to their children about how not to get an STD. But I remember in college, they talked about the things you could do to avoid that. And they had the fraternities, the sororities, people started dating, started kissing, and hormones are all over the place. And so if they're telling you how not to get an STD and they provide contraceptives for people's children, they don't ask the parents for permission. It's just they're on the campus, and it's a don't ask, don't tell. It's just there if you need it. So, and they still have mononucleosis that spread on college campuses because people are lip locking. You only get mononucleosis by lip locking with somebody. So you don't have to have lip lock to get COVID-19. I wonder, will they have any type of stat, Big C, on how they can keep people safe when they do it for STDs? What are they going to do for COVID-19? Tell people don't breathe or wear a mask 24 hours a day? Your thoughts?
Well, this is what I've been saying the whole time. When is the NCAA going to let everyone know who is tested positive for this COVID-19? you have to look at the environment on a college campus, Charlton, to start with.
Yeah.
You when you look at the dormitories, you got athletic dormitories where just the athletes stay in, Charlton, as well as on a mini campus they have co-ed dorms where you don't have the athletic dorms, but you stay in a dorm with the rest of the student body.
Yeah.
You also have the dining commons, Charlton, where everyone goes in and eats in the dining commons. I know all the universities have that. Then you're talking about the fraternities, these fraternity houses that they have, Charlton, that are not controlled by the university.
No, they're not.
Going to sanitize and keep those places clean in the cohabitation in those fraternity houses. But, as you look at the college environment as a whole, there is nothing to separate, having these things sanitized. There's no way that you can sanitize a university campus. And think about the classroom environment, Charlton. As one class leaves out and the next class comes in,
yep.
You're going to be sitting in a seat that somebody had just gotten out of 5 minutes prior to you arriving. As we've known, this COVID virus can live on a surface for several minutes. So how do you go in and sanitize these hundreds of seats there in some of these theater-type classrooms that you have at some of these major universities? So, all we're doing is inviting a lot of problems. And as you say university, what about the high school level where nobody cares about anybody at the high school level?
Yeah.
And you think about when you got 5 minutes between classes in high school. When you get out, you're going right into another.
Yeah.
And the same in these environments. I remember when I was in high school, we wouldn't wash our clothes when we were in football because the high school didn't wash your stuff. You had to wash your own practice stuff.
Oh, okay.
Our clothes would be so rancid in the locker room, you could stand them up once you took out the locker room. They'd be so stiff from all the sweat and perspiration that it dried up in there. So can you imagine the environment in a high school locker room, that is forming there? Because young high school boys, all of them don't know about taking care of the hygiene of their body or the sanitizing of their clothes.
Yeah. Could you imagine the smell of 100 jock straps? Maybe Spike Lee should do that movie, 100 jock straps, how it smells so putrid when you go into a locker room of teenage boys that don't like to shower, especially if they don't even wash their clothes. I know some teams, they don't even wash their clothes if they go on a winning streak because they don't want to jinx it. There's a high school program in Northern California called De La Salle of Concord. They had the #1 winning streak in the history of high school football. I think they won 151 games without a loss. Took them 12 years. Could you imagine not washing jock straps for 12 years? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, just being in any environment with young people, Charlton, for that long. But, and that's real. It's serious. All young boys don't understand hygiene.
Yeah.
They just don't. And I know a lot of kids would be embarrassed about taking showers around others and walk out of the locker room, Charlton, and wait to go home and do that. And we did also have an area that was curtained off if players wanted to go behind these curtain areas. But, when you think about that, and that's the thing that's not being addressed amongst all the adults in the room.
That's a good point.
What do you do to take care of the health of the youth? And I know in the Pop Warner programs, Charlton, around the country, they don't have locker rooms that after practice they can go into a locker room and shower. Whatever they come to practice in, they're going to go back home in, Charlton. So whatever they left home in that environment, those clothing, Charlton, think if they had an infected family member.
That's
with
true.
That.
Yeah.
And they're riding in that car with that family member to practice, Charlton. And so once they get there, that situation is a contaminated area. And so they're going to deal with coaches that are not kids also. So, we're talking about a very dangerous environment that sports is about to create right now in America.
You took my mind back to something. I recall when I grew up, I took my own showers and I got my bath by myself. I think it was in junior high school when I started playing, I think it was a Pop Warner football. When you take your showers, it's a culture shock for about the first couple of days, because you got about 50 guys on your football team, and you're in these stand-up showers. I don't know what it's like in the women's restrooms or locker rooms, but there'd be one big pipe, and it would have maybe 4 sprinklers out of it, one on each side, if that makes any sense. So you're taking a shower about 3 feet away from the next guy, and as uncomfortable as that is for at least the first week, you get numb to it. But that's so many pathogens, just even standing there, you just brought me back to that. I'm sure it's the same way in college and professional sports, too, as I recall. Big C, your thoughts?
Yeah, high school, college, and professional sports is like that. But the Pop Warner level, Charlton, generally they don't have access. Their parents are dropping them off at the practice facility and taking them right home from the practice facility. They don't have access to public showers that you're going to get in high school, college, and professional. But the community showers exist in college and professional. You have the poles where you're talking about with 4 spigots coming out of the main pole, Charlton, or the showers along the wall, the trough type that are along the wall that, have access. And we dealt with both of those in college and professional.
Yeah.
But, it's a community environment. You're walking in there. You got the steam and you got the water splashing back and forth, Charlton. It can't be sanitized while you're using it. There's no way. And a lot of players use those as urinals also. They use it right there on the floor and let it go down the drain. So, I mean, these are the things that you're going to be dealing with. I mean, that's just being realistic. You're not going to walk out of the shower, go down to the bathroom, and urinate when you got a drain right there on the floor. They use it. And everybody knows that have played sports that these things happen. And the females have those same type of showers that the males have in their locker rooms. But we're looking at a community environment that you're bringing everybody in that is potentially going to have the opportunity to pass it on to somebody else.
Yeah, I would think that women have more class than men. I remember taking a shower one time, and when you go on the road, oftentimes in the opposing locker room, they have cold showers, so there's no heated water just to get an advantage. And I still remember I was a freshman in high school, and my leg got warm. I'm like, how my leg get warm when the shower is cold? Sometimes it's called hazing. It's gross, but people know it goes on. I want to just ask your thoughts, Tom, because we're going to get back to sports. According to the Associated Press, the Power 5 conferences are spending big money on lobbying Congress. Now, when would you ever hear of a conference lobbying Congress so that players could get paid? Power 5 conference has spent $350,000 on lobbying in the first 3 months of this year, 2020, more than they had previously spent in any year, Big C, as part of a coordinated effort to get this, Big C, influence Congress on legislation affecting the ability for college athletes to earn endorsement money. Now, a lot of these universities know if we don't find a way to pay our boys legally, they're going to go to another school. You have conferences from the SEC, the Big Ten, the Pac-10, the Big 12, and the ACC. They're all spending money to get Congress to say, let us give our boys some money, Big C, as a way to induce them to come on back to school. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the NCAA is behind the 8 ball on that, Charlton. When Ed O'Banion won his suit against the NCAA a couple of years ago for his likeness, that, money that he should have earned and stuff, and he was awarded $44 million in that lawsuit, Charlton, in beating the NCAA. That opened the floodgates for what is occurring now. The NCAA knows that they can't go back to court and win since they've already lost with Ed O'Banion, the former UCLA basketball player.
Yeah.
And now we saw a couple of states where governors had already approved that players would be able to receive money on their likeness and all of that. The NCAA understands that what they're trying to do is regulate the amount of money that players can spend, and they're also trying to make it set up so that these players are going to have to pay taxes on the money that they're getting. That's why they're lobbying. They're not doing it in good faith for the players. They're doing it to also take something back out of the players' pocket.
Yeah, they're going to say to the player, you see, guys, you were getting money free without taxes when we were paying you with a paper bag. Now you got to pay Uncle Sam for doing the same thing we were doing for you without taxes. It's all fair and love and war. We know that's going to happen, though. I want to take what's called the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. When I come back, I want to ask you a lot of questions about high schools, because you threw my mind back to when I used to take these cold showers in the locker rooms with 50 of my teammates playing high school football, and that also went on into college when you have about 100 players. We'll take the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on the app that I love called Google. Or Alexa, just say Google. Or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow on Xfinity Podcast, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and a lot of podcasts all over the universe. Really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. I want to get into this thing real quick, Big C. I know we talked about it briefly about high schools and in the junior colleges, but there's about 10 questions heading into the high school, the fall season when I think about it, you make me think about the cold showers I used to take in to get warm every now and then, kind of gross, but you took my mind back to it. But the new safety concerns for coaches, they're above and beyond the normal issues of concussions. Remember, concussions were the big topic about 2 years ago with Dr. Ben Amala. Will Smith played that movie called Concussions. And now they're going to be dealing with heat stroke as well. So will there be a football season, number one? Number two, how much preparation needs to be in place for a football team to start its season, Big C? Your thoughts?
You know, and these are the things we've been discussing. As you think about, no one thinks about the youth aspect, Charlton, of getting sports back to playing. And when you're talking about the separation, we just talked about that in the showers. There's no separation. And
No.
these lockers, you got to realize the lockers in a high school are nowhere near the size of the lockers on a collegiate or professional team's facility. I mean, they're really tight. They're probably about 10 to 12 inches
Yep.
wide, the little lockers,
Yep.
tall lockers that they got to put all of your stuff in, to fit it all inside, Charlton. And so that's a major concern. And we talked about these players sitting side by side on these benches in the locker room trying to get dressed, trying to get undressed while they're perspiring and all this. And it's unhygienic also in these locker rooms. They don't go through and sanitize a high school locker room. They don't have the budget. You got to realize a lot of players got to pay their own fees
Yeah.
in high school to be able to play. They got to pay their own insurance bill, Charlton, to be able to be on the team as well as sign these waivers.
Yeah.
They got to supply their own shoes. All these high schools can't afford it. They're not sponsored. So these players have to foot the bill. So, and generally to get their own clothes washed, Charlton, they got to take their practice clothes home, and they're only going to do that maybe once or twice, in a month to
Yeah.
get them washed. So think about all the bacteria that's going to be forming in there.
Well, there's some things I remember I had co-ed when I had PE. I was in high school. I remember, I'll never forget, you brought my mind back to a lot of things. I remember because people don't think about this too. I remember there was 2 girls in the gym class. I won't mention their names because I don't mind what they did, but they both grabbed me and they pushed me into a phone booth and they started kissing me. And I was 16 years old. I didn't mind at all, Big C. At the same time, we didn't do it with COVID-19 back then. So it's not something that just boys do things. There's women that run around with their hormones are jumping around too. And as we put people back in these environments, knowing that we have a pathogen, I wonder how many lawsuits are going to come out of that. So when does a decision need to be made about the football season? And will teams be given extra preparation time? That's number 3. Number 4, is there a season where the fans will be in the stands? Does that make any sense to you, Big C? Your thoughts?
And this is what we look at, what's the preparation time for these athletes? We know at the college we're talking about getting football players back on campus, getting them to work out. Are they going to do that still with these high school kids, Charlton? Are they going to come in early like the collegiate
Nope.
and work out? And then we all know that, high school football is a generational thing, that you have generations of family members that sit in the stands. I mean, you have brothers, you have sisters,
Yeah.
you have aunts and uncles, mothers and fathers, grandfathers and grandmothers, great-grandparents, Charlton, that sit in the stands. So when we talk about the age and vulnerability of the crowd at the football stadium, and then all these people, Charlton, have a tendency to interact after a game. In many high schools, everybody just congregate on the field once
Yeah.
the game is over.
Yeah.
So you're reminiscing about old things that happened, Charlton. You're rekindling friendships with the neighbors and somebody you may not have seen for several years
Yeah.
that left town and all these things. So all of these things make everybody vulnerable when you look at the high school environment. I know a lot of emphasis is put on every show that we watch and listen to around the country. All we hear about the collegiate and professional athletes, Charlton.
Yeah.
No one is giving any credence or consideration to what the vulnerability is of these high school games and parent participation, family participation.
Well, Big C Sports is doing it. So does it make sense to swap football season for the winter or spring or number 6, other than changing seasons? What other adjustments could be made? I'm really thinking about some of the things you remind me of, having to take showers with a group of young teenage boys. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, as you think about this, as they talked about starting some football seasons later, up until just this week, Charlton talking about lifting the restrictions on states. No one's giving thought to that, especially with these high school kids.
Yeah.
And you think about a lot of high schools, as you talked about, last year on our show, are traveling out of state to play other schools. They're not just staying within their community. So, and we talked about that, remember, a couple of days ago. What happens if an athlete tests positive on the road? are you going to be able to test these high school athletes like you're talking about testing the professional and collegiate athletes? And if one of these high school athletes was to fall ill on the road, where's the economics to take care of that kid, Charlton, if he can't come back home right away?
You know, there were people on cruise ships that they were self-quarantining for 14 days. Imagine taking that to a high school kid. There are programs from California to Florida, Texas to New York. They all play in these cross-country games. That's a very good point to bring up, Big C. So maybe they'll even consider to ban those. I want to get on a couple more. What are the other challenges for college and high school football coaches? And do the girls' volleyball season, does that appear to be in jeopardy? They're always talking about that. And one more I'm going to throw in there. Does the cross-country season also appear to be in jeopardy, Big C? Your thoughts?
And you think those things run, with each other, Charlton, in college and in high school.
Yeah.
The ladies' volleyball has become huge. I mean, it is a gigantic sport.
Yeah.
When you think about all the club teams that they have that travel around, not just the high school teams, but a lot of these girls play on club teams, just like you talked about AAU basketball.
Yeah.
Where they travel all over. And you think about, they're talking in baseball where the players can't high five, you can't touch, you can't spit, no more slapping on the butt. The girls do this all the time. They're high-fiving each other after a dig or a kill, and just, walking up, hugging each other. This is one of the things they do. The kids are so used to physical contact with each other, emotional, congratulatories that they give each other.
Yep.
You can't stop that just by saying, don't do this, because your mind goes to another place when you're involved in a competition. You're only thinking about what you do there. I mean, you think about basketball players. Somebody makes a great play. Everybody's high-fiving, slapping on butts and everything. The girls do it in volleyball
all the time.
So as all this emphasis has been put on the young male athletes, no one is really giving any consideration to the young female athletes, Charlton. I know a lot of these sports will be lost because of the lack of revenue from football if it cannot generate it, but you have to give these young ladies as much consideration as you're giving the young men when you're talking about health risks and precautions.
Yeah, you have to, and oftentimes they'll take a back seat. They're focused on the boys' sports. You don't hear much talk about women coming back and how they start in volleyball season when guys are playing the football. I want to go across the border, Big C, to old Canada, our home and native land. The good old boys and girls from the Canada Canadian Football League, while the CFL training has been canceled due to open this week. It's been a foregone conclusion for more than a month that the league would be unable to play its code. I think they have about 418 games scheduled. As part of Wednesday's announcement, the CFL, Canadian Football League, they acknowledged the earliest that it would begin play in September. Teams, I think in September, that's when the NFL is kicking off, Big C. So when you think about that, they need a definite goal signal by early July because it allows the American players to arrive for what's called the mandatory 14-day quarantine before the start of training camp. Big C, that make any sense to you?
Yeah, I mean, it really puts the Canadian Football League in quite a peril, Charlton, when they're talking about starting their season, in September, where it normally would start, you say, the 1st of July. So that's basically half the season would have been lost. And so they have to really scramble about how many games that they're going to play at that time. And we know it gets really cold up there towards the end of the season. I think the championship last year was sometime around Thanksgiving in November last year when they had the game up in Calgary, when they had their Grey Cup. I think it was the 108th Grey Cup that they had.
Yeah.
But if you look at that, Charlton, if they're starting the season in September, and they would have, and that's the halfway point of their season that would have been played on a normal circumstances, how many games are they looking at playing? And at what time of the year they're looking at playing their championship game? Because in Canada, it can be around 0 degrees at that time, Charlton, at the end of November, sometime in December. So that's really going to affect them. And then for them to have to go head up against the NFL as far as viewership, that could really put that league in a huge deficit.
Well, think about this. Those are grown men. College football in the United States is saying, let's get things going and get good old boys back out here running around for free in the month of June. Doesn't make any sense. But I want to ask you about the NFL. If the NFL teams play games without fans in the stands in 2020, the league could lose about $5.5 billion, according to Forbes magazine, and that figure is based on stadium revenue from 2018. So the sum of tickets, concessions, and sponsors, and parking, and team stores, that's about 38% of total revenue. But if you're sick, who cares how much money they're making? Big for your thoughts.
Well, the owners, they care about how much money they're making. They're talking about ownership. They're not talking about the players. It's already set what the salary cap is, Charlton, and what the money is that the players are going to give. But when the owners look as a collective group that they can lose $5.5 billion, that's really concerning to them.
Yeah.
And losing that money without having fans in the stadium, Charlton, so you know how much money they're going to lose if they don't have any TV revenue. That only represents 38%. So you're talking about, if TV revenue is not there, you're talking about losing $8 to $9 billion without television revenue, Charlton. So these owners are really concerned about putting their product back out there. As long as they have the games and they're guaranteed the television revenue, it's not about based on fans in the seats. So from an ownership perspective, they want to have the larger cut of the pie. So they need the games to be played, Charlton, because there's $8 to $9 billion on the table without the games being played. They'll eat the 5.5, but they want the 9.
Yeah, they want the 9. I want to get into something about the Rooney Rule. You just popped my mind on it, and they were talking about how to address the grievances for African-American coaches. They're saying you got to interview a coach and a coordinator, and that's going to help them perhaps. However, I want people to Google this. You don't hear about this study that I'm going to tell you about. The differences in the success of NFL coaches by race. And it came out from 1990 to 2002. The evidence of last hire and first fired, would you believe this? And they can Google this too. There's a study in the Journal of Sports and Economics. Although there have been numerous analyses of racial discrimination in professional sports, none have analyzed football coaching, but Big C Sports is doing it today. The analysis of the regular season win-loss records and the making of the playoffs for the National Football League, the teams coached in by African Americans and white coaches between 1990 and 2002, would you believe that American coaches, African American coaches, they were more successful in the analysis of racial comparisons for overall season records, for records in the first year, and records in the year of an involuntary departure of a coach? Big C, that's evidence is there. And when we talk about how we make it fair, I've always proposed, if you just treat black coaches the way you treat white coaches, then you'll give people a job based on knowing their name, not based on their credibility. And everyone should do that comparison. For people that say, well, they don't have the aptitude to do it. They didn't do too well on whatever BS test that we gave them. And so we don't really feel comfortable. If you study 1990 to 2002, they had African-American coaches compared to white coaches. And the African-American coaches were more successful, even though there were only a handful of them. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, coaches need to be hired on their merit. I think what all the owners should do, matter of fact, the league should do this with the owners, is that the owners put down a criteria of what they're looking for. They submit that to the league and have the league go through that and funnel through who they're going to have come in and interview as candidates, as well as everybody who is in consideration for a head coaching position, that they need to write in this requisite to the league also, so that the league has it on file.
Yeah.
They need to understand what would be that potential coach's running of that organization. How would he implement his rules and regulations and his plays and style that he wants from the players?
Yeah.
The owners of a team needs to do that also to the league. What they're looking for in a coach, in their next head coach. That coach might even be on the staff already. He may be an assistant coach.
Yeah.
But everyone who's in a coaching position in the NFL, just like you put resumes out everywhere else when you're looking for jobs, and when other companies are putting, a want ad in a paper or online, what they're looking for in a candidate, all the owners of the NFL team needs to put that down. We know you're looking for a head coach.
Yeah.
But what's the criteria in the head coach, what you're looking for? Be colorblind on it. Don't say he needs to be white, but just what you expect from him, what type of players you expect from him, and also the coach, the potential coach needs to do that, and vice versa with the league.
Yeah.
They need to put down what they're looking for in players, the type of system, the type of regulations they're going to have with a team. But you just can't go in there and say, okay, we're going to bring in a guy for 2 hours. In that 2 hours, we're going to have a great understanding, or we're not going to like him at all. Because you can't go in and say, okay, we're going to interview minorities. But we told you 3 months ago on air the guy that we would like to have as our next head coach. He was coaching with somebody else. Then that eliminates the Rooney Rule, which has been eliminated already. But, you have to have a fair playing field when you walk in. You just can't say that we're going to announce. And if a team announces that this is somebody that they're looking for as a head coach, that it breaks out in the media, they were talking about awarding teams with a draft pick if they bring in a minority in management or coaching. I think if it comes out over the airways that this is guys the number one in consideration, you should lose a draft pick. I mean, that's what should happen. If teams start announcing this is a guy on the top of their list for their next head coach, you automatically lose a draft pick. And we're talking about a high draft pick, at least a second-round draft pick. If you start announcing that you want this white guy as your head coach and no minorities had an opportunity, and I'm not going to say minority, but no black coaches had an opportunity to interview, then you lose a second-round draft pick. That will squash all of that, Charlton.
Yeah, we know it's about, you got to bring it up because people who benefit from discrimination, they don't talk about it. It's happened in housing. It's happened in everything. But quit pretending that we gotta hire somebody based on, who we know. If you look at the records, you compare the black African-American coaches to the white coaches from 1990 to 2002. There'll be another study done from 2010 to 2022. Black coaches were more successful. Even going back to 1946, when the Cleveland Rams at that time moved to Los Angeles, and they had what they call the integration of NFL football. It was Kenny Washington broke what's called the color barrier. Even though there were about a dozen black Americans that played in the NFL back in the 20s and 30s, I think the last was 1933 up until 1946. But now you look at it, the league is about 75% African American. It's just about the color thing. They don't want to integrate that. It has nothing to do with the Rooney Rule. That's just my opinion. But I want to go on to this study that we found out. We started looking at the paper and the financial statements of the Los Angeles Rams, owned by billionaire Mr. Kroenke. The L.A. Rams, would you believe, in the largest state in the union, the L.A. Rams received $500 million they were seeking from the NFL to fund the construction of the new SoFi Stadium down in Inglewood, Los Angeles. The stadium is believed to have a price tag in the neighborhood of $5 billion. That's requesting $500 million loans. That isn't the first eyebrow raising for National News, Big C. The Rams this offseason, and two former players, Todd Gurley and Clay Matthews, they complained that they missed some paychecks being received, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, that lets you know that there's some bad management going on in Los Angeles already. You got the constant overruns, cost overruns of this stadium that's not completed, and they still got to go out and borrow money. Kroenke only put up $1.9 million in that stadium construction out of his own pocket.
Yeah.
The rest of it, guess where it came from? Taxpayers. Now he's got to go back to the league and ask the league for a $500 million loan, so the rest of the owners gave it up because they want a facility to play in Los Angeles. It's not about the Rams. It's about the rest of the league. Of what they do profit-sharing wise in the league. And then Kroenke can't pay two former players, Todd Gurley and Matthews. They were let go by the team, and the team said, well, we're still not going to pay you the rest of your money because we got a shortfall in trying to build a stadium. Not only that, Charlton, think about what the ticket price is going to be out there at that stadium. If that stadium has that type of overrun and they're selling personal seat license, how willing are people in Los Angeles going to be 3 years from now if the Rams haven't gotten back deep into the playoffs? We see how strong the NFC West is. And even another, kick in the butt to the Rams on this new stadium, the Chargers open up with the first game of the stadium, not the Rams.
Isn't that something? They get the Chargers, they started in L.A. back in 61, and they've been bounced around, so maybe make them feel better. They've been playing down in I think called the StubHub Center, about 27,000. But in the next few minutes, as we complain about the Rooney Rule, and the Rams need more money because a billionaire always needs more money, Big C, and black men can't even get a job interview. We complain about the Rooney Rule, but I want people to keep in mind, the NFL not giving black men jobs is nothing new. Housing discrimination is still part of the political debate in 2020, people not being able to get loans. And this is so important because you're talking about millions of people with good credit and income, and they're being passed over. And I want people to pay attention. They can Google this. The banks and the FHA refusing to make loans to black Americans throughout redlining, which was going back to 52 years ago, when we had the Fair Housing Act passed in 1968. They're still dealing with that today. And I just want people to, as we complaining and trying to come up with conversations about how to get black men jobs in the NFL, even in the housing disparity that exists, So I want to add this. Instead of talking about problems, a solution, I still want to congratulate Magic Johnson. As we argue about the Rooney Rule, Magic Johnson's company helping to create $100 million in loans to help minority-owned businesses and firms during this coronavirus pandemic. The solution oftentimes comes from government, yes, but they have a history of saying no. It's good when private enterprise also says, hey, we're willing to lend you money that you're being denied elsewhere. Big C, your thoughts?
But if people are not aware and don't have access to that private enterprise, Shelton, how is that going to benefit them? I mean, Magic can have this organization, and there's plenty of black philanthropists in America long before Magic Johnson. We have 5 black billionaires in this country that have been philanthropists for a long time. But to have access to that is the same as having access to a bank. I mean, it's not publicized, and so where to find it is going to be the most difficult part for the patrons out there.
Yeah, well, we just advertised it. You won't hear it on other programs, but just Google Magic Johnson and the $100 million that he's making for minority loans. There are links all over the place. Even Robert Smith is doing a lot of things to help people because they didn't get part of that first, what's called the stimulus package. And that's important that we talk about that more than, did you see Michael Jordan dribble a basketball at Big C? You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on the app that I love called Google. Or Alexa, just say Google. Or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Really appreciate the affiliation with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, Direct TV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants. Just tell them Big C sent you. The goal is simple: recruit 100 real estate brokers, put their property listings on TV just like McDonald's does it. Car dealerships do it. And sports teams will do it too, Big C, once they get off the pause. You can call 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. Also, for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. That's bigcsports.pacwm.com. I'm really looking forward to that. In the final few minutes, we know the NFL is going to reopen training camps coming up by next week. That's what they're saying, Big C. And everybody's trying to get out there and run some wind sprints. But I can't get out of my mind the showers that I took as a freshman in high school. In a cold shower, sometime my leg felt some warm water. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, this is the major thing that I would wish that some of these broadcast companies would start talking about, Charlton, is the youth and the peril that they potentially may be in this country. We're talking about young boys and young girls, Charlton, that have participated in sports teams all over America. They've been the feeder for all the universities and colleges across the country. When we think about football, we think about girls volleyball. We talk about track and field, and all of these things run at the same time in high school and the collegiate level. And now all of these kids are going to be exposed once again. Not only that, you're going to be bringing family members and parents, brothers and sisters into that same exposure realm. And what's going to be done about keeping them safe? Are you going to be testing any of these high school players around the country? That is the one thing that has not been said by any health department, any sports league, Charlton, or any sports broadcasting company. What are you going to do about testing the youth of America?
Especially mom and pop soccer leagues, but they don't meet the profile to want to rush them back out to play. From the United States to New Zealand, from cricket to baseball, spitting is being outlawed to avoid COVID-19. Big C, how are you going to see a baseball game if a pitcher can't spit on a spitball? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, that's one of the mandates that Major League Baseball put out in their new rules, that if they're going to open up the season, Charlton, that there'll be no water bottles, no Gatorade jugs in the dugout, no sunflower seeds, no spitting, no high-fiving, Charlton, no fist-bumping, no hitting on the butt. And if the baseball is touched by more than 2 players, then that baseball exits the game. Most of them do anyway. Anytime they scuff the ground, they're gone. If somebody's got a hit off the ball, it's gone also. But these new rules and regulations that baseball has put in, you cannot do it. You can't find somebody in baseball who is not going to spit, Charlton. It's a natural thing. I remember when I was a kid, to be able to spit between my teeth, I used to take these ice cream sticks that used to come in the popsicles and wedge my two front teeth apart from it. It
On
ended up
purpose.
with a huge gap in my teeth. I was being dumb and everything.
Yeah.
But because I wanted to be able to spit standing there in the
Wow.
dugout and on the field playing baseball,
Yeah.
so I put this intentional gap between my teeth just to be able to spit.
Well, thank God for video games, BC. Final story, NFL player unnamed is suing United Airlines for claiming that he was sexually assaulted by a woman who grabbed him by his genitalia during the flight. He complained many times, and the airline would not release the name of the passenger who did the assault. It happens to men and women, too. We want to make sure that we keep people safe. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in this sports universe?
Well, Charlton, once again, thank you to all our healthcare workers out there. And what I'm looking for, Charlton, is for some sports league or all sports leagues to come out and say how they're going to test and how they're going to keep all the young men and young ladies safe that are not playing professional sports.
That's very well said, and we will also try to keep people safe. You can stay safe, too, every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America, as Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, that's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.